Decomposing and composing fractions. Well, boys and girls, you can see these two words at the top of the screen, and they look like a couple of words that maybe you're wondering what that has to do with math. If you recall, we've talked about decomposing and composing numbers by breaking them down into parts according to place value when we've done expanded numbers, such as if we had the number 142, we could break it down or decompose it into 100 plus 40 plus 2. So if you think about what we learned in science, decomposers are materials or animals that break things down. A material would be like a fungus. An animal would be like a beetle or something like that, that breaks down rotten or dead material. So in the same manner, the word decomposing means to break down numbers. And in this lesson, we're going to be talking about just breaking apart fractions. It's a pretty simple concept, but the word decomposing might sound a little intimidating to you, and I don't want you to be thrown off by that because it really just means to break down. Composing, if you think about that word, you might think about composing music, which means to write it, composing a poem, which means, again, to write one or make one. So composing fraction means putting several together to make a total, such as when we add fractions. And that's really what this is going to be about. As you can see, I have a fraction here that is a total of 8/12. Let me get my pen here ready. So 8/12. And we can break 8/12 down into 3/12 plus 3/12 plus 2/12. So we just decomposed 8/12 and made it 3/12 plus 3/12 plus 2/12. You might ask yourself, why do I need to know this? What would be the purpose of doing that? Well, you're going to be learning about how to multiply and divide fractions, and maybe you have a larger fraction numerator that you are uncomfortable working with. If you realize that you can decompose it or break it down into smaller numbers, then that makes it easier to work with, because I'm pretty sure most of us have reached the mastery level of our basic facts, at least through our 5s. Most of us are through the 12s. But let's say you have a bigger number like 24. Well, you could break that down into 12 plus 12, or you could do 2 10s and a 4, and then that way it makes your problem solving simpler. So it's just an easier way for you to look at breaking down a larger fraction. Now, that piece that we talked about with composing, we would take that 3/12 plus 3/12 plus 2/12, and we would add that together, and we would make it 8/12. Then if we were composing and having to add that, then of course 8/12 is not in its simplest form, and we would need to simplify it, which I will remind you how to do on the next slide. On this slide, we're going to look at 8/12 and how do we simplify that. Our first question, if you remember, our number one question is the numerator a factor of the denominator. Whoops, looks like that's not fitting on there. So let's see if we can fix that here. Okay, get that written back over there. Is it a factor of the denominator? Well, 8 is not a factor of 12, so we want to find the greatest common factor. And we have to do that by listing out the factors of 8 and 12. And I think we've done this enough that you guys automatically know that the greatest common factor of 8 and 12 is going to be 4. So there's our greatest common factor. 1 and 2 are also common, but 4 is the largest. So that would make it the greatest. We divide both the numerator and the denominator by 4 over 4, which equals 1. So 8 divided by 4 equals 2. And 12 divided by 4 equals 3. So 2/3. 8/12 equals 2/3. Again, this is part of that composing and decomposing where you understand that you can either break apart a fraction and make it simpler to work with, or you, when you're asked to add them, you're composing them and making them a larger fraction. This also goes along with our lesson and building on our lesson of mixed numbers and improper fractions. When we have improper fractions, remember the steps for that. So on this one, we are going to talk about improper fractions. So let's say we had 3/5 plus 3/5 plus 1/5. That would give us a total of 7/5, which we would then need to make into a mixed number. We do that by a couple of different ways. We can do 7 divided by 5. We get one group of 5. That leaves with 2 left over. 2 becomes the new numerator, and our 5 remains our denominator. So it equals 1 2/5. Another way for us to look at it is to do a subtraction problem, which is, again, another way of doing division. We can subtract 5 over 5, which would be our 1 whole, and we would be left with 2/5. So remember, we circled that 1 whole and we put a 1 over it. So that tells us that's our 1 whole, and 2/5 is makes it our mixed number. So remember those two different ways of solving this problem. I hope you have a good night. See you tomorrow.